Welcome to learnhowtoquilt.com. Today I want to share with you the story of this I Spy quilt. It's a project I almost threw away because of all the mistakes, but in the end I decided to salvage it. I hesitated to share this with you, but I believe we learn best from our mistakes. Usually I spend lots of times trying to get perfect points and seams to make sure that everything will line up when constructing the top. In today's video, you'll see how it's possible to get problem blocks in line without any seam ripping. Your blocks might not have perfect points, but your quilt will be square and lie flat. If you're not interested in this quilt story, but would like to learn how to fix or camouflage mistakes, you can skip ahead to those sections. I've left the links below. My daughter asked me to make a baby quilt for her friend who was using a nautical theme for the nursery. We looked for ideas on the internet and soon decided on sailboats. Most of the patterns were inexpensive or free, but I wanted to play around with some ideas, so I ended up drawing my own pattern. Mistake number 1. Choosing fabric was easy, as I usually use novelty fabric to make I Spy quilts for kids. I pulled out blue and green scraps for the sails and then paired up fabrics for each boat. I used a white tone-on-tone fabric for the background and a black one for the boat's hull. Mistake number 2. I couldn't wait to get this all sewn up and was in a big hurry to get started. Mistake number 3. Unfortunately, I didn't test out my new block before cutting everything out. I soon found some of my calculations were off and sections weren't matching up. To make matters worse, I was in a hurry and became a sloppy sewer, which then led to blocks being different heights and points not matching up. I also noticed that I used the wrong side of the white fabric in some of the blocks. Despite all these warning signs, I continued sewing like a maniac until all my blocks were complete. I also made a pact with myself that I was not going to rip out any seams, which actually led to more problems when all the blocks had to be sewn together. Now comes the hard part, sewing all the mixed size blocks together. I thought about randomly placing them, but that takes more time and I was in a hurry, so I went back to rows, which meant I needed to get the blocks to the same height and width. I sorted through my blocks looking for the largest and the smallest to see how much of a difference there was. And I decided that wasn't much of a difference there. So if I got this straightened here, I think the real problem here are these points. No matter what I do, I'm going to have to cut some of them off. So I just need to get over that and concentrate on getting all these blocks lined up in the row. Before I sew these in a row, I want to trim that off at the top just a little. When I place it like this, you can see that this piece is really off here. So I don't recommend trimming your blocks, but in this case, because it's off so much, I'm just going to slice this piece off there. I think that'll make it a little bit easier. Let's see. That's pretty close in size now, and that's pretty close in size. I went with sashing the same as the background because it'll help hide problems. When all the fabric's the same, each block will blend into the next one. White tone-on-tone fabric can be troublesome to use as it's hard to tell the wrong side from the right side. Here's a mistake I made earlier. Luckily, I remembered a good practice. Place the fabric on your thigh or somewhere so that you're looking down on it. Turn it over and you'll see the difference. It's like magic. To get everything to line up, I use one row as a template. I trim these blocks to be the same size as the block above it. I could probably trim a little bit more off of this one. Let's see. I'm looking at the seam allowance right here to see where to trim it. can see here, I trimmed that. Now these two blocks, there's a big difference. Let me move everything over so you can see. I think this was one of the widest blocks. Let me put this down. And once again, I'm lining this up to that seam allowance up there. And I'll trim that off. Then I'll go in and sew these strips between the squares. If a block is too short, you can mark where the seam line should be. Then you can line it up with the 1/4 inch seam on the sashing and sew. After the rows were sewn, I went in and trimmed any excess fabric, and I was ready for the horizontal strips. Now that I have all the rows in order, I'm ready for the horizontal sashing. I'm going with a different white tone-on-tone fabric. I originally wanted blue to symbolize the water, but I was afraid that many of my problem seams would pop out. Each sailboat row, in theory, should be the same width across, so I used my template again and cut all the strips this size. I marked each strip where the horizontal seams will intersect. A long time ago I learned this the hard way, that the vertical strips have to line up or the quilt will look off balance. Then I laid everything out on the wall. I put right sides together and then pinned. Now when I pinned, I wanted to make sure to match up these marks first. So I'll put this here, pin here, and pin over there. Come over here and match that, and then match that one. Now I'm ready to pin these 3 spots here, and I might have to do some easing. So let me come to the end here, and I see that, oh, this is going to be a little short there, so I probably want to line this up with this. I'll pin, and let's see, oh yeah, there's extra fabric in here. So I kind of like to distribute that just by hand, but if you want to go in and baste it and then fool around with it that way, that's okay. But I tend to find that I can just sort of move this around to get it so that it's, nope, I probably could get a little bit more fuller on this side. Okay, so let me come over here and let's see. That looks pretty nice and flat. So let's put one pin there. So let's look at this end piece here. I see on the edge here that, oh, I'm probably going to have to go like that and pin it. Just might be off a little. Oops. Let's scoot this over. So pin it like that. And then I've got some fullness in here. Let me pin that. To redistribute this fullness, it's best to sew with that side against your feed dogs because your feed dogs help to move that fabric along. But I've got the pins on the wrong side, so I can move these pins to the other side or just try to take it over and sew as is. And I think I'm going to want another pin in here to sort of get that little bulk out of there. Okay, let me take it over to the machine and stitch. Now I'm ready to add the outside borders. In order to keep the top squared up, I cut 2 border strips the same size as the center, and then I ease them onto the edges and press towards the border strip. I do the same with the last 2 borders. I cut 2 strips the same length as the center measurement. After sewing, the seams get pressed towards the borders. To the top, I added batting and backing to make the quilt sandwich, and then I stitched in the ditch with minimal quilting. I did decide to add what looks like a V between the sailboats to even out the quilting. I'm not happy about all the mistakes I made, but in the end, I'm okay with the results. Let us know if you'd like to hear more quilt stories like this. You can comment below or email me at ann@learnhowtoquilt.com. You might also want to check out these 2 videos about mitered corners. This quilt was used for that demo. Thanks for visiting LearnHowToQuilt.com. Please like, subscribe, and share our videos with your friends.